It's story time. Story time. Let's read it story time. Story time. Geek this story time. Story time. You and me is story time. Story time. Let's achieve hello everyone and welcome to story time with me, Kayla. How's everyone doing out there? I hope you are doing well and making sure to stay safe. Today we have another special Arthur feature. Today we will take a look at a book from Author Bryson Thompson Sr., who is a mentor, fellow educator, and a self-published author. Now today's book is so special to me because it talks about something that we've all either experienced or will eventually experience, and that is death. So without further ado, the book we will be reading tonight is called How Angels Are Made. A journey of love, grief, and understanding through the eyes of a child. Written by Bryson Thompson Sr. Ready to see what this book is all about? Here we go. Ready, set, let's begin. How Angels Are Made. A journey of love, grief, and understanding through the eyes of a child. By Bryson Thompson Sr. Here we go. He signed it. It says, "May this book be a blessing to you. Always remember that you are never alone, that angels are always watching over you." Absolutely. Thank you so much. Bryson Thompson Sr. And he dedicates this book to his family. So shout out to all of you all. Here we go. BJ was getting ready for bed. "Get your pajamas on and I'll read you your favorite book," said Mommy. After changing, he curled up next to his mother on his bed. As they got ready to read, his mother noticed a curious look on her son's face. "What's the matter, baby boy?" she asked. "Mommy," said BJ, "where do angels come from?" "Well, son, angels are very special people who have left Earth and watch over special little boys from a place we call heaven," Mommy answered. "Awesome!" exclaimed BJ. "Do you think I'll ever have an angel one day?" "I'm sure you will, one day, my dear. I'm sure you will," said Mommy before opening the book and beginning to read. The next morning, BJ woke up to the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. He leaped out of bed and ran downstairs to see one of his favorite people standing at the door. "Grandma!" BJ shouted excitedly, running towards her with arms open for a big hug. "Hey, Grandma's man," beamed Grandma, wrapping her arms around her little grandson. "How are you today?" asked BJ, looking up at her. "Doing fine," answered Grandma with an expression she often used. But there was something different about Grandma today. It was something BJ couldn't quite put his finger on. "Come on and let me show you my new games, Grandma," encouraged BJ, dragging Grandma over to the play area where they spent the afternoon playing together. Soon it was time for Grandma to go home. "Don't go," pleaded BJ, hoping his sad face would change her mind. "Grandma has to go," she said softly as she reached down to hug him. "But you can come and visit any time you want, baby." Yes, said BJ enthusiastically. He walked to the door with Grandma and watched her as she walked away. "Love you, Grandma," shouted BJ, waving goodbye. "Love you too, Grandma's man," Grandma shouted back, returning the wave. "See you later." A week later, BJ called Grandma, a routine they both looked forward to. "How are you, Grandma?" he asked. "Doing fine," replied Grandma. "Are you being a good boy at school?" "Yes, I am," said BJ, secretly hoping that Daddy hadn't told her about his day at school. Grandma encouragingly said, "Always go to school, listen to the teacher, and learn your lessons. Then you will grow up to be a great young man who helps other people." "Okay," replied BJ, taking the advice to heart. "Love you, Grandma." "Where are we going, Daddy?" asked BJ from the back of the car. "Grandma's house, to check on her," said Daddy. "Grandma's house?" BJ yelled as he saw a very familiar house. He ran through the door to be greeted by the biggest smile. "How's Grandma's man?" said Grandma, embracing him in a warm hug. "I'm doing great, Grandma," said BJ, always happy to see his grandma. "How about you?" A brief second passed before Grandma responded. "Doing fine." Soon she was following behind BJ to the kitchen where she always had the best food. As they walked, BJ couldn't help but notice Grandma was moving a step slower than normal. His concerns were quickly washed away when he and Grandma spent the rest of the day doing all the things they loved doing together. Grandma showed him how to make cookies, they sang songs from Grandma's phone, they talked about school, friends, and watched some of their favorite TV shows. Soon it was time to go home. While Daddy was loading up the car, BJ ran back into the house to get another special hug from Grandma. "Love you, Grandma," said BJ, squeezing tight. "Love you too, little man," replied Grandma. She finally let go as Daddy gestured for BJ to go. "See you later." "See you later," said BJ. As the car pulled away, BJ continued waving as his grandma grew smaller and smaller. Several weeks later, BJ entered his parents' room to see his daddy packing his suitcase. "Where are we going, Daddy?" BJ asked. Daddy turned around, and BJ could see his eyes were wet from tears. "We have to go to Grandma's house," he said. His voice was shaking. "What's wrong, Daddy?" asked BJ, concerned because his daddy never normally cried. "We got some bad news today, baby boy," answered Daddy. "We have to go to Grandma's house, so we're getting ready." On the way to Grandma's house, Daddy and Mommy explained to BJ that Grandma had a bad disease called stomach cancer, and she was gone to a better place. Once they got there, BJ noticed several cars parked out the front, instantly recognizing them as belonging to his uncles. Before his parents could stop him, BJ ran up the house, through the door, and his eyes scanned the room for his favorite person. "Where's Grandma?" he asked aloud, looking around the house without a sign of her. "Grandma's not here, buddy. Come sit beside me and Mommy," Daddy said, placing BJ between both of them. "Remember when we talked about Grandma being gone to a better place?" At some point, all of us eventually die, leave Earth, and move to God's house, where we become angels, said Daddy, choking back tears. "Will I be able to see her again?" asked BJ, wanting one of Grandma's big hugs now more than ever. "Where she's gone, you won't be able to see her," said Mommy. "But she's always smiling, looking down at you and making sure you're safe. Whenever you feel scared or sad, think about Grandma and she will help you feel better." A few days later, BJ and Daddy walked up to a large white church. Inside the church, BJ spotted a familiar face lying in a beautiful gray box. "Is Grandma okay?" asked BJ, wondering if she was sleeping. "Yes, she is more than fine," said Daddy, wiping his eyes. "She's become an angel, and angels don't need their old bodies. Will she still look like Grandma? Asked BJ. She will look exactly like you remembered her, replied Daddy. She's looking down at you from God's house. BJ held on tightly to his father and looked at his grandma as she lay still in front of him. Love you, Grandma, said BJ as he blew her a final kiss. As BJ got himself ready for bed, he found himself thinking about God's house. Mommy, asked BJ, where is God's house, and what is Grandma doing there? It's in heaven, up there in the sky, Mommy said as she looked out the window. Your grandma is a very special person. Now that she's in heaven, she can be your special guardian angel. BJ looked down at the toy in his lap. It was a gift Grandma had gotten him last Christmas. He remembered unwrapping it and playing with it. It made him wonder how Grandma was doing in heaven. Suddenly, he heard Grandma's voice saying, "Doing fine." It was as if she was in the room with them. She's looking out for us right now, isn't she, Mommy? Asked BJ. Yes, she is, my love. We have our angel protecting us, replied Mommy with a slight smile. Feeling happy with that thought, BJ looked up at the ceiling, imagining Grandma looking down at him from the heavens. Although you may lose someone in their physical form, their memories and lessons live forever. Through your life and greatness, they will remain. You are a living testimony to their legacy, and they will continue to watch down over you. In memory of Gwendolyn J. Tanner. Sunrise, May 2nd, 1958. Sunset, February 3rd, 2016. And he wrote a little message to his mama. And here's his family. BJ, Malcolm, and Maya, and his wife. And there's him and his mom. The end. Okay, crew. This was such a beautifully written book. Bryson Thompson actually wrote this book after the passing of his own mother, Miss Gwendolyn Tanner. He wants the reader to know that even though it may be hard, you are able to create that conversation about grief and loss. And hopefully you were able to connect with this book and to make it a little easier. I want to give a special shout out to BJ, Malcolm, and Maya. Always know that you have a very special angel shining her light down on you. Now, to find your copy of How Angels Are Made, visit his website at howangelsaremade.com. Also, be sure to follow him on social media. Okay, crew, I absolutely hope you go and grab your copy of How Angels Are Made. This is such a beautifully written book, and I really think everyone needs to have this in their household. I thank you all so much for joining me, but it's time to sing goodbye. Goodbye, 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 my friends, goodbye to you. I hope to see you again real soon. Be proud of all your work tonight. Now climb in the bed and sleep real tight. On the count of 3, let's say goodnight. 1, 2, 3, good night.